Is this really where you want to spend the rest of your life?
You know I don't.
Then this is our only ticket out of here.
What's happening?
There's something in the water.
What do you mean there's something in the water?
I don't know, there's just something in the fucking water. Something's hunting us.
Open the door, come on.
Run.
Tomorrow. Are you sure you want to do this?
In 1979, Ridley Scott's Alien emerged as a pivotal work in the sci-fi horror genre, introducing the iconic xenomorph and the formidable Ellen Ripley, portrayed by Sigourney Weaver. Set in a not-so-distant future, it followed the crew of the Nostromo, who, while investigating a mysterious moon, encounter a dormant extraterrestrial starship.
Mother's interrupted the course of our journey.
Seems she has intercepted a transmission of unknown origin.
SOS.
I don't know.
Bones have been outward. Like he exploded from inside.
This is completely enclosed, and it's full of leathery objects like eggs or something. Seems to have life, organic life.
The crew member Kane, played by John Hurt, unwittingly hosts a lethal, multi-stage parasitic organism that would evolve into the xenomorph. The Perfect Organism and Lethal Hunter would not only define the movie, but also lay the groundwork for a sprawling franchise. Like the xenomorph at its center, the series has displayed remarkable adaptability, shifting through genres from sci-fi horror to action, biblical epic, schlock and gothic horror, yet it always retained its core identity as a monster movie. The series peaked with Ridley Scott's thrilling Alien and James Cameron's action-oriented 1986 sequel Aliens.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Since those high points, the franchise has depreciated in quality. David Fincher's 1992 Alien 3 brought a visually striking yet bleak addition.
It's crazy! They will not kill us!
What makes you think they're gonna care about a bunch of lifers who found God at the ass end of space?
And the 1997 Alien Resurrection embraced a distinctively 90s schlock vibe. Scott revisited the universe with the flawed prequels, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, which explored grandiose theories about life's origins and featured Michael Fassbender in a dual role as a megalomaniacal android, but in doing so removed all of the mystery surrounding the xenomorphs.
Ellie, I'm not wearing this thing anymore. Wish me luck, baby.
Woo!
No, Johnny!
Do it.
Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
With Scott pursuing other projects due to the commercial failure of Alien Covenant, the franchise was dead in the water. That wasn't until Fede Álvarez came up with an idea for an interquel.
The whole idea behind this film was to really take it back to basics and make it a pure horror movie again.
This story slips right in between Alien and Aliens.
Following Disney's acquisition of 20th Century Fox, Alien Romulus arrived with the challenge of living up to its predecessors while aligning with a new corporate vision of scrapping originality in favor of nostalgia. The original Alien film is celebrated for its simplicity, essentially a haunted house narrative set in space. When at its best, Romulus understands and seeks to replicate this formula, creating an environment where the audience feels the claustrophobia and dread with the characters trapped on a spaceship. The new movie is set approximately 20 years after the original Alien and 37 years prior to Ripley's awakening in James Cameron's Aliens. The film has Álvarez channel his admiration for the works of Ridley Scott and James Cameron, and even the game Alien Isolation.
Samuels, listen to me. It's not safe here. Seegson's got this place locked tight. Their goddamn androids are killing people!
That's impossible. It's contrary to primary synthetic programming.
I've seen it, Samuels. I guess Seegson's got a different idea about synthetics. And there's something else here. A creature, it's big and it's lethal.
Ripley, slow down. A creature?
It's a life form, an unknown type. Some kind of alien organism. It's extremely dangerous.
Unfortunately, there are also nods to the less favourable entries in the series, which drag it down. It follows Rain Carradine, played by Kaylee Spaney, an orphan on the storm-enshrouded and dismal Weyland-Yutani mining colony of Jackson Star. Her life is marked by the loss of her parents, indentured servitude to the company, and her bond with David Johnson's Andy, a malfunctioning synthetic android she treats like a brother. All of this takes a dramatic turn when she and her old friends discover a derelict space station orbiting their planet. After deciding to salvage some equipment they need from the Renaissance, it's not long until the group find themselves fighting facehuggers, xenomorphs, and other obstacles from the company to survive. In an effort to encapsulate what fans cherish about the earlier films, Álvarez attempts to blend the horror-driven, claustrophobic atmosphere of Alien with the action-oriented Aliens, with nods to almost every other film in the franchise. The result is a film divided much like its setting, the twin stations Romulus and Remus, combining elements of a haunted house in space with a horror action narrative. Hey guys, what's happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained, and today, we're breaking down Alien Romulus. Approximately 20 years following the events of Alien, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation make a significant discovery. Their probe locates the remnants of the Nostromo, the commercial towing vehicle left adrift in space after Ripley triggered its self-destruct mechanism. Pretty sure we saw the ship and refinery eviscerated in Alien.
3, 2, 1.
So there shouldn't be anything left. More than that, even if we buy that some wreckage survived, Newton's first law indicates that there are no significant forces that would slow them down. So, everything should be in perpetual motion, at the same velocity of the speed that propelled it post-explosion for 20 years, in every possible direction. Kind of like a miniature Big Bang, spreading debris everywhere, which means that there should be no two pieces of wreckage near each other. The probe retrieves a fossilized asteroid from the wreckage and transports it back to the Renaissance space station. Here, a team of scientists gather for the unveiling. As they slice it open, they uncover an impression of the xenomorph that Ripley had expelled into the void, despite the alien being ejected well after the Nostromo had self-destructed. It shouldn't be anywhere near the vicinity of the wreckage, which itself should not exist as Ripley shot it out of the goddamn airlock after they travel some distance away.
Just doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Nearly a year later, Kaylee Spaney's Rain Carradine, a miner of Weyland-Yutani, grows weary of her life in the perpetually dark colony on Jackson Star. Dreaming of sunlight on Yavaga 3, a fully terraformed planet, Rain, alongside her adopted brother Andy, look forward to relocating there. She had amassed enough work hours for a travel pass, but their hopes are dashed when the company raised work quotas, extending her required service by 6 more years. In space, no one can hear you scream about overtime.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa!
That's too damn bad! You keep digging!
What I loved is how Alien Romulus utilized the bleakness of Weyland-Yutani's economic subjugation as a driving force, embracing the franchise's hallmark of corporate malfeasance. The setting is starkly mechanical and relentlessly grim, evoking a sense of palpable misery. Andy, an outdated model, struggles with malfunctioning servos and systems. Programmed by Rain's late father to prioritize her well-being, his attempts to assist are limited, often manifesting through endearing yet silly dad jokes. His vulnerability here is highlighted when he becomes a target of a hate crime by anti-synthetic bullies, prompting Rain to intervene with her access key to reboot him. Amidst these struggles, Rain is approached by her ex-boyfriend Tyler, his sister Kay, his cousin Bjorn, and Bjorn's partner Navarro, who propose a daring escape plan. They've discovered an abandoned company ship adrift above the planet and want to salvage its cryosleep pods, enabling them to leave the godforsaken world. Crucially, they need Andy to circumvent security protocols and communicate with the onboard mother computer. The notion that only a group of young rebels would notice a derelict space station, while the powerful Weyland-Yutani Corporation remains oblivious, challenges our suspension of disbelief, especially when we later find out how important the work on the Renaissance was to the company. Initially hesitant, Rain eventually sees the risky venture as a potential path to freedom, and decides to join the group in their daring mission. I think that Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson deliver exceptional performances, anchoring the film's emotional and narrative core. Unlike Ripley's seasoned survivalists that we see develop throughout the series, Rain is portrayed as a vulnerable young woman, grappling with the oppressive demands of corporate slavery. Her journey is one of desperation, navigating a relentless escalation of peril as she faces both the physical threats around her and the emotional turmoil of possibly having to leave Andy behind. Johnson's portrayal of Andy is a standout, redefining the role of the synthetic in the alien universe. Unlike Ash's antagonistic nature, Bishop's benevolence, or David's genocidal malevolence, Andy is depicted with a semblance of love rather than mere obedience to his creators and corporate directives. His eyes are perpetually half-closed, as if weighed down by the fatigue of endless human interactions, and the burden of processing a world he can analyze but never fully grasp. But apart from those two, the other characters, Bjorn, Tyler, Navarro, and Kay, aren't that memorable or carved out. Bjorn's character is jaded after the death of his parents at the hands of a synthetic, hence his animosity towards Andy, but that's about it. Navarro is a pilot, full stop. Tyler is Rain's ex-boyfriend and a more compassionate member of his group, along with his sister Kay, who invokes sympathy from us purely from the fact that she's vulnerable and alone for much of the film. The group quickly realize the station's orbit is decaying fast, giving them 36 hours to get in and out before it crashed into the rings around the planet. Upon docking, they find the station is split into two sections, Remus, where they currently are, and Romulus. I have to say, the production design by Narman Marshall and cinematography by Galo Álvarez pay meticulous homage to the series' origins. The brutalist architecture of the star mining colony and the station are steeped in the aesthetic of the early films. The crew discover that while the cryopods are functional, they lack sufficient fuel for the duration of their trip to Yvarga 3. During the transfer of these pods to the Corbelan ship the others were on, Tyler, Bjorn, and Andy employ a tracking device to locate additional cryofuel on the Remus. At the same time, Rain learns that Kay is expecting a child. While the father's identity doesn't concern Kay, she's excited about the prospect of her child being born under the sunlight of Yvarga. Monitoring the team's progress, Rain is heartbroken when Bjorn, harboring resentment, tells Andy that his kind are prohibited on the planet. Rain then sorrowfully confesses her delay in breaking this news to Andy, and despite Andy's programming to prioritize Rain's welfare, which seems to keep him content, his reaction to the revelation carries a hint of melancholy. In this portion of the film, you realize that Romulus delves deep into the franchise's storied past, weaving elements from its predecessors into every aspect of its production, ranging from subtle allusions to more heavy-handed nods. The technology, with its tactile switches, buttons, and LED displays with rudimentary graphics, deliberately features a more retro, utilitarian look that aligns with the classic entries in the series. Upon finding the cryo storage room, the situation escalates when Tyler and Bjorn pull the fuel pods powering it, increasing its temperature and triggering a failsafe that locks the exit. Learning that Andy lacks the necessary security clearance to open it, Rain and Navarro hurry on board to help. Their solution lies with a dormant, partially melted synthetic in an adjacent lab, which might have the required clearance to free them. And so, Rain extracts a programming module from the synthetic and hands it to Tyler to install in Andy. This causes Andy to temporarily freeze as his system undergoes a reboot. Concurrently, a critical situation unfolds. The once dormant experiments revealed to be facehuggers awaken and break free from their containment. This leads Tyler, Bjorn, and a newly upgraded Andy to engage in a desperate struggle to fend off the creatures and escape the room. While they're able to get out, a facehugger manages to escape with them and attach itself to Navarro. I really thought that the first half of the film was thrilling. The technical aspects from the cinematography, score, sound design, and aesthetic truly made it feel like a part of the established universe. And although the secondary characters were underdeveloped, when it focused on Rain and Andy, that was enough to keep it grounded and have me invested in the story. Álvarez demonstrates a keen understanding of the Alien franchise's enduring appeal, particularly its blend of claustrophobia and suspense.
Run.
The other technical elements also shine, with editor Jake Roberts skillfully enhancing the film's tension. While Andy's enhancements do not include data on the xenomorphs, he proposes that the inactive synthetic Rook, played by the late Ian Holm and Daniel Betts, could provide crucial information. Romulus is best when it began as a standalone film, with the aesthetic and tonal callbacks to the Alien films, but this is when it started to go off the rails. Rook, revealed to be another model of Ash who betrayed the Nostromo crew, was previously the science officer on the Renaissance. He had overseen the company's efforts to dissect, study, and breed the xenomorph species. Although the original xenomorph had been destroyed by a security team after a rampaging spree, the threat persisted, with facehuggers wreaking havoc on the rest of the crew. Ian Holm's resurrection as Rook not only seemed distasteful, but was also unnecessary. This poorly executed CGI, reminiscent of an AI-generated character, clashes with the otherwise tactile and grounded aesthetic of the movie.
Perfect organism.
Lack of oxygen and food is of no true consequence to this perfect organism.
Rook not only resembles, but recycles Ash's most famous lines, plunging into the uncanny valley with an appearance that feels more like a deepfake than a tribute.
Did you know that Disney actually developed their own deepfake method, and they released a whole technical paper and video about it? It's basically a computer practicing to be a portraiture artist. He was looking at somebody's face, and it kind of paints a version of it, and it looks kind of blurry and weird.
Far from a brief cameo, the problem is that Rook is a central antagonist, steering the plot into its least compelling and most egregious directions.
I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies.
It's puzzling why they felt it was necessary to bring him back, or why a different synthetic wasn't just used like Bishop, especially considering Lance Henriksen is still alive.
I prefer the term artificial person myself.
They even repurpose this line from Bishop and give it to Andy. Unfortunately for the group, when Rook's chip upgrades Andy's system, it also overrides his primary directive. The transformation we see poses a significant dilemma, forcing him to fight between adhering to the interests of Weyland-Yutani, the corporation that effectively controls his new programming, and protecting Rain along with her friends. And it was interesting to see how the internal conflict drove his character and dominated many of his actions. Despite Rook's advice to eliminate Navarro immediately, Rain devises an innovative solution, freezing the facehugger's tail to remove it. The method proved successful. However, Rook reveals there was a chance the facehugger had already implanted an embryo within her. As Rook continues to transfer more of his programming and directives into Andy, he imparts a contentious instruction. Andy must help the humans contrary to their inherent flaws and desires. Feeling an obligation to act more decisively around Rain, Andy resolves that Navarro should not return to the Corpulent, as she would put them all at risk. Nevertheless, Bjorn and Navarro manage to evade him and board the ship, inadvertently leaving Rain, Tyler, and Andy stranded on the Remus. In a horrifying turn of events, Navarro succumbs to a chestburster, which splatters blood over a horrified Kay, who honestly has no idea what's going on. In her final moments, Navarro accidentally kicks the controls of the Corpulent, sending the ship spiraling uncontrollably around the station, dislodging a fuel pod. Straining believability, the Corpulent somehow crash lands in the docking bay of the Romulus section.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
This catastrophic event accelerates the station's fall towards destruction, drastically reducing their survival window from 36 hours to less than an hour. In a desperate bid for survival, Rain, Tyler, and Andy must navigate through a connecting hallway swarming with facehuggers, and so they cleverly raise the temperature, rendering themselves undetectable to the creatures as they cautiously move through. The film spends its first 40 minutes without showcasing any live xenomorphs, yet even with the unnecessary addition of Ian Holm's Rook, this segment was arguably the strongest part of the film. So, Kay and Bjorn encounter a cocoon left behind by the xenomorph after shedding its chestburster form. Instead of simply running away, Bjorn's dumb attempt to eliminate the Xeno with a cattle prod backfires when it bleeds acid on him. He literally has no self-preservation instinct.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
I know the supporting characters are fodder to narrow the focus down to the core characters, but there's a better way to reduce their numbers without having them make stupid decisions. They're young, but there's a difference between naivete and stupidity. The side characters in both Alien and Aliens are wiped out because they were outwitted, outsmarted, and outmaneuvered by the cunning of the xenomorphs. They put up a valiant fight and made the best decision that was available to them, but Bjorn here does the dumbest thing possible and doesn't even attempt to roll away once the acid starts to drop on top of him.
It's really sad. It's pathetic.
The fully matured xenomorph then emerges from its cocoon, prompting a panic-stricken Kay to alert Tyler through their communication device. This spurs him and Rain to hurry their escape from the leaping facehuggers. They eventually reunite with Kay, who's managed to evade the alien long enough to reach the safety door. However, Andy determines that the alien is using Kay as bait and decides against opening the door, leaving her to get taken away.
If you think about the first movie, most of the kills happen off camera. You don't see them. You see the inner mouth coming out, boom, headshot, right? But then you don't really see it. You just really figure out a way to escape it. I can think of a few, right? But usually the kind of creature gets to you and they cut away. Gets to you and cut away. Because people don't know. Do they eat you? How they kill you? And that's what's great about it, that you really don't know and you rarely see it. There's other monsters that you know exactly the way they kill you. The xenomorph is really tricky.
We revisit the concept of the xenomorph as a perfect biological entity, an enigma that is both unstoppable and scientifically inexplicable. Álvarez adeptly utilizes the creature's predatory nature, turning the ruined space station into a deadly hunting ground. And here, the creature is portrayed as a brutal force of nature, but this is about to be undone by the end. The trio navigate to the main laboratory within the Romulus, where Rook has directed them to retrieve a critical experiment for preservation. It turns out that he'd successfully isolated the primordial black goo from the xenomorph's genetic makeup, a substance previously encountered in Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Capable of acting as both a fundamental form of life and a deadly pathogen, it has been engineered by Rook into a strain intended to evolve humanity into the perfect organism. This development is part of the company's broader space colonization efforts, which have been plagued by mining disasters and disease. Alien Romulus begins with promise, navigating plot inconsistencies and somewhat hurried character arcs to establish a tension-filled exploration of the space station. However, the script falters when it delves too deeply into elements best left in the prequels by revisiting the unnecessary explanation of the xenomorph's origins. The prequels diminish the creature's mystique by over-explaining their background, thus reducing their impact as enigmatic cosmic horrors. Unfortunately, Romulus repeats this error, perhaps due to Ridley Scott and the insistence by producers that the entire Alien series be acknowledged. Rook planned to use the primordial goo to advance his nefarious goals, echoing Alien Resurrection, which introduced a hybrid human-alien creature, and David, who had a god complex and sought to become a creator of new life. For me, this prompts the question, aren't the original xenomorphs terrifying enough? The franchise's ongoing obsession with altering H.R. Giger's sleek, iconic design to create various genetic aberrations has resulted in forgettable and often ridiculous creatures. The xenomorph's life cycle alone has been sufficient to terrorize audiences without the need for clumsy genetic experiments. The first half of Romulus with the facehuggers and xenomorph exemplify this, proving that the series can captivate without resorting to awkward mutations. Armed with several vials, Andy also equips Tyler and Rain with aim-assisted Colonial Marine pulse rifles. These things literally lock onto a target, requiring the shooter to merely pull the trigger. Considering the movie is set 37 years before Aliens, I was baffled by how the Marines had more advanced weaponry in the past, as firing a shot into a xenomorph would cause its blood to breach the hull. They hope the mere presence of the weapons will deter the aliens. Spoiler, it won't.
So I figured a way, and you'll see it in the story. That's why it takes place between two movies in a way, almost perfectly, in actually 20 years after the first story. So technology-wise and era-wise, the technology of Alien obviously exists, and the technology of Aliens is not too far. And no one said that what you see on Aliens has just been invented, right? Particularly, it's supposed to be a shitty colony in Aliens. So the stuff you encounter there is technology that's been around for a while, I'm sure, right? Maybe the Colonial Marine stuff might be more modern, but so we're standing right there where we can enjoy a bit of both worlds.
Faced with the Xeno that attack Kay now blocking their main route to the Corbilin, they choose an alternative path, leading them directly into a xenomorph hive built within the Romulus. They hear Kay's cries for help and find her injured, but uninfected by a facehugger, due primarily to a significant blood loss. Tyler considers using one of the vials to aid Kay, following Andy's suggestion, but Rain intervenes, saying that she doesn't trust it.
Who are you, who are so wise in the ways of science?
Instead, Rain proposes they put Kay in a cryopod and get medical attention back at the colony. As they attempt to escape the hive, Tyler is fatally impaled by the lead alien, and Andy suffers severe damage that shorts his system. Despite these calamities, Rain and Kay manage to reach an elevator, narrowly escaping a surge of xenomorphs and facehuggers. Realizing the depth of her bond with Andy, Rain sends Kay up with instructions to head to the cryopods on the Corbilin while she climbed down for her brother. Distressed and concerned that she might not make it, Kay stupidly injects herself with a vial in desperation.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
Once Kay arrives, Rook, prioritizing cold logic, declares Rain and Andy lost causes. He then urges her to activate the ship's remote autopilot, allowing him and the mother computer to return to the colony with the black goo. Meanwhile, Rain successfully removes the corrupting influence of the Rook module from Andy, restoring his original programming. Their situation is dire, trapped within the hive with Rook unwilling to assist, fearing it might endanger the experiment. And in a cringe-inducing moment, he literally repeats the line,
I can't lie about your chances, but you have my sympathies.
However, inspired by one of Andy's jokes, Rain devises a plan to disable the artificial gravity, allowing them to shoot the xenomorphs without the risk of their acidic blood breaching the station's hull.
What?
They seem to have overlooked the concept of momentum. While the acid blood wouldn't just fall to the ground due to the lack of gravity, the force from the bullet impacts would cause the acid to disperse chaotically over the walls. Executing this plan, Rain eliminates the Xenos and the pair navigate through the floating acid droplets. In Aliens, almost 90% of the marine forces were wiped out in a few minutes, yet Rain is able to kill a dozen of them with auto-aim assist. Here, all the effort of framing the Xenomorphs as unstoppable predators is undone. This is why the last act resorts to introducing a new threat in the final 15 minutes, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Their escape is nearly thwarted when gravity is restored midway through their ascent in an elevator shaft, causing Rain to fall, the character, not water droplets. Luckily, she's caught by the xenomorph that was born on the Corbilin, which then bizarrely begins to push her towards the ladder on the opposite side, instead of killing her like it did with Tyler. While the actor's performance was great, the capabilities of Andy are inconsistent. He struggled to open the door at the start, when he, Bjorn and Tyler needed to escape from the lab, yet in later scenes he's seen doing just that. The selective functionality is made obvious here, when he holds the lift and prevents it from crushing Rain, but that's not even the worst part. Rain is then rescued by Andy, who destroys the alien using the rifle, before uttering the words,
"Get away from her, you bitch."
This line, said by Ellen Ripley 37 years later in the series' timeline, feels out of place and serves only as a wink to the audience, one that doesn't make sense for Andy's character. It not only undermined Ripley's originality, but also cheapened the experience, making everyone in the cinema groan. Honestly, having Andy say, "Get away from my sister," would have suited him better, making it the first time that he actually acknowledged her as a sibling, in the same way that she did. This is what I mean by the film buckling under the weight of its legacy, resorting to familiar tropes and callbacks that don't serve the narrative effectively. The pair eventually reach the Corbilin and depart as the station begins its collision with the planet's rings. Contrary to Rook's intentions, Rain disengages the autopilot and charts a course for Yavaga. Like many entries in the Alien saga, the narrative culminates in a fourth act. After integrating Andy into the ship's systems, with a new directive to do what's best for both of them, Rain is on the verge of entering her pod when alarms ring from Kay's. Upon inspection, Rain finds Kay inexplicably far along in her pregnancy than she should be, and she witnesses a gruesome, bloody emergence of an egg-like hybrid. While trying to eject it from the ship, the egg turns acidic and begins to hatch, unveiling a humanoid creature that descends into the cargo hold. Armed with cryotubes, Rain pursues this rapidly maturing hybrid, a fusion of human, xenomorph, Mark Zuckerberg, and engineer traits dubbed the Offspring. This thing grows from a baby to a nightmare-fueled 9-foot monstrosity within a minute. The creature, driven by instinct, attempts to suckle from Kay. When Andy intervenes, the Offspring slashes at his neck, and feeling rejected by Kay, it horrifically consumes her blood. Amidst the chaos, cryosmoke envelops the ship, nearly freezing Rain, and in a desperate bid for survival, she dons a spacesuit and works to detach the cargo hold. After a harrowing struggle, Rain manages to eject the offspring and the cargo into space, sending it plummeting into the debris field where the Romulus and Remus continue to disintegrate. As she places Andy into a cryopod, Rain tearfully assures her synthetic brother that she will repair him once they reach Yavaka, despite us being told that synthetics are banned on the planet. The film ends with Rain recording a voice log in her cryopod, expressing hope to reach the planet despite the uncertainties ahead.
It's a future from the 80s that we just are leaning back into and not creating, a new genre or anything. So we are staying within that world of, was it futuristic then? Probably. As you watch it now, does it seem futuristic? Not necessarily. But we want to just make sure that the feeling of what we are doing stays right in that pocket.
The initial world building is both vivid and effective, immersing viewers in a convincingly bleak dystopia. For the first act, the film succeeds in capturing the escalating tension and horror that defines the series. The technical aspects are executed with remarkable precision, and Alien Romulus doesn't shy away from intensifying the horror elements. Cinematography was also great, while the set direction and production design meticulously capture the essence of the franchise, showcasing an exquisite attention to detail. I also really appreciated the creature effects, particularly the use of animatronics, which enhanced the horror, making scenes with the scampering facehuggers thrilling.
So in half of the job is make sure you bring the right people. We brought all the guys that worked on Aliens with James Cameron, same team, came back to this movie to work on all the creatures. But also that's the first part. And the second part, which is the hardest part as well, is to make sure you shoot it right and it looks incredible and you bring them to life through the lens. And that's it's almost like a dying art these days. So it's really, really hard to do. But I always prefer to go the hard way for the audience and make sure you don't go the easy way and you go just the long, hard way. And I think that's when it really pays off for the audience.
The movie's structure nods to its predecessors, the working-class angst of the original Alien, sections reminiscent of the Alien Isolation video game with humans and a xenomorph in a deadly game of hide-and-seek, exploration of DNA manipulation and evolution from Prometheus and Alien Covenant, a third act with action that calls back to Aliens, and a finale that aims to reimagine Alien Resurrection. But while the film does incorporate some innovative sequences, it generally portrays the xenomorphs more as targets for rifles than as the formidable, acid-spewing predators they're famed to be. I felt like all the goodwill developed in the first half is undone in the second, especially as the characters start to make silly decisions, many of the plot holes start to leak, the two-dimensionality of the characters becomes more apparent, and the film refuses to cut its umbilical cord to Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Because of this, what started as a homage to Alien and Aliens ended up feeling more like a continuation of Ridley Scott's disappointing prequels. This was unfortunate, as the high production values and the authentic connection to the aesthetic and style of its predecessors highlighted that it didn't need overt callbacks to work. In fact, it's at its best when the references were merely aesthetic, rather than a repeat of plot motifs and even direct dialogue from the previous films.
I was living in Amsterdam in 2004, and I went to see AVP. It was the first time I smoked a joint in my life. I was high as a kite, and I went to see AVP, and the first hour of that movie I thought was the best movie I ever saw in my life. Watch it sober, it's not as good, but that first hour of that movie, let's give it some love because they had some really incredible moments.
I love AVP, but I also love Prometheus because David is that boy. Like he's got some crazy one-liners, yeah. Great character. I'm a fan of that one.
Alien Romulus rushes towards action and suspense, yet neglects the crucial aspect of character development. Without fully fleshed out personalities or compelling motives, other than with Rain and Andy, the characters become difficult for the audience to care about. The film's focus on action over character exploration results in a protagonist who feels invulnerable, and a supporting cast that become forgettable. And there was no reason to introduce another hybrid, or the black goo in the final act as the xenomorphs, which should have been the focus of the film, were what we came to see. Romulus serves as a mostly entertaining and thrilling spectacle, showcasing Fede Álvarez's mastery over the technical aspects of filmmaking. However, it opts to mimic its predecessors rather than contribute a distinctive chapter to the franchise, and this is why it started to feel like a greatest hits film. And considering how strong the opening was, this was just so disappointing. Despite many of my gripes, I still had a good time with 2/3 of the movie. I just wish we had more of the Remus side of the story and less Romulus.
That's what I hope happens with the audience, that they get all that vibe and they get that style from the original movies. But at the same time, you know, like there's, while always making decisions about how we're going to make this movie and all these practical effects and all these classic techniques, I always knew that, you know, 2023 at that point when we made last year will pour through the windows. There's nothing that can stop the current times, right? So there's always going to be technology and things, just the way people are and actors behave but the way you tell stories as well, everything. It's impossible to stop that from coming in, and I think it's in the mix of those two things, of the classic techniques and the classic approach to filmmaking and the today, the modern elements, is that combination that's all that makes it look and be fresh and new, right? So, but it is, you know, with Rodo, my co-writer, our approach was like, okay, if Alien is a band, we want this movie to be that show you'll be waiting for, where they just play all the hits when they go, okay, we're gonna play all the songs, and plus we get to play a few new songs.